Welcome, Wanderalv Stories. You have stepped into echoed enigmas, where every tale holds a heartbeat and every whisper hides a truth. If these are the stories you've been searching for, subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a secret waiting to be told. Now, take a deep breath and let the echoes begin.
The air in Mukurwe village was thick with the scent of roasted goat and fermenting muratina. It was the harvest celebration, but for Waria, the joy was a shroud of thorns. Her dream, to become the village's first certified herbalist, had just been publicly crushed. The revered council of elders, guided by her uncle Kama, the self-proclaimed traditional healer, and her family's patriarch, had rejected her application for the final apprenticeship. Her modern training, they decreed, was a betrayal of the ancestors' true wisdom. Her mother, Nyara, and her sisters, Mura and Wana, clustered under the great Mugumo tree, their laughter a sharp, ugly sound. "The foolish girl," Nyara hissed, loud enough for Waria to hear. "She should have settled for a good husband, not dusty books and foreign methods." Kama raised a clay cup, his eyes glinting with malicious triumph. "To the spirits," he boomed, "who protect our traditions from wayward daughters." Waria stood alone near the communal cooking fire, the smoke stinging her eyes. She gripped a small, leather-bound notebook, her grandmother's, a tear tracing a hot path down her cheek. The rejection was not just professional, it was a deep personal humiliation orchestrated by the very people who were supposed to be her shield. She knew their glee was not about tradition, but about control. This public failure was their victory. She vowed then and there that it would be the shortest-lived victory they would ever taste. Fate, she knew, did not belong to the council.
Waria retreated to the small, dilapidated hut her late grandmother Shiku had used. Shiku, the true village healer before Kama's ascent, had been a woman of quiet power and deep secrets. The hut smelled of dried herbs and ancient earth. Kama had immediately claimed Shiku's main stores and reputation upon her passing, dismissing Waria's grief and her inheritance as insignificant. However, he had overlooked this small hidden place. On a rough-hewn shelf, Waria found an old, intricately carved wooden box. Inside was a single, brittle, sun-bleached scroll tied with a dried vine. She unrolled it carefully. It wasn't a standard remedy scroll, it was a genealogy map, a complex hand-drawn chart of the village's founding families. At the bottom, Shiku had scribbled a cryptic message. "The greatest root lies beneath the oldest betrayal." Waria traced her finger along the lines. The map clearly showed her grandmother's lineage, and then a strange, bold line branching off to an entirely separate, forgotten family, a line that circled back to the village's founding matriarch. But most startlingly, a specific name on the chart had been vigorously scratched out, then rewritten faintly beneath, as Kama, though the original name was still barely visible beneath the ink. It was an unnerving correction, a deliberate alteration of history. Why would her grandmother hide a family secret within a scroll of remedies? And why did it involve Kama's ancestry? Waria felt a chill, realizing the public scorn was merely the surface of a deep, rotting secret.
Driven by a mix of curiosity and rising dread, Waria meticulously soaked the scroll's scratched-out section in a poultice of crushed leaves, a technique Shiku had taught her for restoring old parchment. As the ink softened, a different name emerged beneath Kama's, Gichi. Her breath hitched. Gichi was the name of a distant, despised family line, long banished from Mukurwe generations ago for a supposed act of treachery against the founding chief. Kama was not the true descendant of the esteemed lineage he claimed. He was a fraud who had usurped his identity to gain authority in the council. The public humiliation Waria faced was not just about tradition, but about Kama protecting his stolen power. He feared that Waria, with her grandmother's keen mind and access to old knowledge, might uncover the truth. Waria understood the weight of the information. To reveal this would shatter the council and utterly destroy Kama's prestige, but she needed irrefutable evidence. The scroll alone would be dismissed as a bitter fabrication. The genealogy map highlighted a small, almost imperceptible symbol near the village's oldest fig tree, a mukuyu. This tree stood on a small rise known as the Place of Forgotten Oaths. It was a sacred place where the original founding families had buried tokens of their pact, a tradition long since abandoned. The symbol must mark a hidden location. Her heart pounded with a new kind of resolution, one born not of despair, but of a quiet, burning vengeance. This was no longer just about her career. It was about unmasking a lie that corrupted the very heart of her ancestral home.
Waria waited until the dark, moonless hour just before dawn, when the village was deep in its slumber. Armed with a small hoe and the weight of Shiku's secret, she crept to the mukuyu tree. The ancient roots snaked across the earth like sleeping pythons. She located the subtle indentation that matched the symbol on the scroll and began to dig. The earth was hard and resistant, but the thought of Kama's smug face fueled her labor. After 30 minutes of careful digging, her hoe struck something solid. It was a smooth, heavy stone. Beneath the stone, she uncovered a small clay urn sealed with hardened beeswax. The urn felt weighty and cold in her hands. She scrambled back to her grandmother's hut and carefully chipped away the seal. Inside, wrapped in a thin layer of old dried bark, was not a traditional artifact, but a small silver locket. It was tarnished with age, but unmistakable. Engraved on the bark were the initials G-W-K, Gichi wa Kama, a direct link to the banished ancestor, but with the surname of Kama's claimed family. More importantly, inside the locket were 2 tiny miniature portraits. One was of a young, strikingly handsome man, Gichi. The other was of a smiling young woman. Waria instantly recognized the face from a faded wedding photograph she had once seen in the family archives. The woman was Tony, Kama's mother. The true scandal was about to unfold.
The portraits confirmed a truth far more scandalous than mere identity theft. The young Thoni, Kama's esteemed mother, had been secretly involved with the banished Gichi. The timeline was crucial. Waria knew from the council's records that Thoni had wed Kama's supposed father Kara immediately after Gichi's family was exiled. The locket was a token of a forbidden, secret affair. This meant that Kama, the man who flaunted his pure lineage and traditional authority, was the secret, illegitimate son of a banished traitor. His entire life, his prestige, and his control over the village were founded on his mother's well-guarded secret, a secret that even the ancestors' ritual oaths had been used to conceal. Waria realized the depth of the betrayal. Kama hadn't just changed his family name on a scroll. He had been the true source of a long-ago, deep-seated scandal. Her failure had simply been his way of silencing a distant, perceived threat. Anyone with the intelligence and historical access to expose him. He feared Waria because she was Shiku's granddaughter, and Shiku, as the old healer, would have been privy to Thoni's darkest secrets, perhaps even assisting in the deception. The locket combined with the scroll was no longer just about lineage. It was a potent weapon of social destruction. She pictured her family's celebrating faces, the scorn in her mother's eyes, and a cold resolve settled in her heart. She would not simply reclaim her honor, She would dismantle the entire power structure they cherished.
The next day was the final day of the harvest celebration, culminating in the village assembly, where all matters of importance were sealed. Kama, looking triumphant and impeccably dressed, presided over the gathering under the mugumo tree. He was preparing to formalize Waria's rejection and install his own pliable, unproven nephew as the new apprentice. Waria stepped forward, her calm demeanor a sharp contrast to the anxious whispers of the crowd. "With respect, Elder Kama," she said, her voice clear and strong, "I must first address a matter that touches on the integrity of the council itself and the purity of our ancestral heritage." Kama's smile froze. "The assembly only considers matters of village importance, child, not the sour grapes of a failed applicant." Waria ignored the jeers of her family. "This involves the greatest root beneath the oldest betrayal, Elder," she countered, echoing Shiku's words. She then produced the scroll and the silver locket. "I present the true genealogy map, restored by the very methods you deem foreign, and a token of a forbidden pact." As she passed the locket around, revealing the two miniature portraits, a gasp swept through the assembly. The resemblance between the man in the locket and the infamous Gichi was undeniable. The picture of Tony confirmed the devastating affair. The people stared at Kama, the air thick with disbelief and dawning
The
fury.
assembly erupted into chaos. Nyara and her sisters were the loudest, suddenly pale with a sickening realization. Their triumph over Waria was now overshadowed by a colossal family disgrace. Kama, utterly blindsided, struggled to regain control. "Silence! These are old lies, the desperate fabrications of a vengeful girl," he roared, pointing a trembling finger at Waria. But his panic was too obvious. Waria stepped into the circle, holding the newly restored scroll high. "The locket proves the affair, but the scroll proves the usurpation. Elder Kama is not who he claims to be. He is the son of Gichi, the banished man. His mother Thoni buried the truth in an unholy oath with my grandmother Shiku to protect her son's right to remain in Mukurwe. Kama's entire authority rests on a scandalous, decades-old lie." The murmurs swelled into a roar. Kama's nephew, the intended apprentice, immediately dropped his traditional staff and slunk away, distancing himself from the crumbling patriarch. The true plot twist, the real scandal, was not just Kama's parentage, but the fact that he was the son of the very man whose name he had worked so hard to erase from history. He was a living paradox, a zealot for tradition who was himself a walking, breathing blasphemy against that tradition. Overwhelmed by the sudden, brutal exposure, Kama collapsed onto the dusty ground, his ceremonial robes settling around him like a shroud of failure. His victory over Waria had lasted less than 24 hours.
The aftermath was swift and devastating for Kama's faction. The council, shamed and utterly discredited, immediately stripped Kama of his title and banished him from the village for his treachery and impersonation. Nayara and the sisters, their faces etched with the agony of social ruin, could only watch as their position in the village plummeted from respected family to the kin of a fraud. The silence of their earlier mocking laughter was the sweetest sound Waria had ever heard. The path to her own victory, however, was now clear. The council, in its desperate attempt to restore order and prove its renewed commitment to honesty, offered Waria the highest honor, the immediate full title of village herbalist, complete with control over Shiku's full ancestral stores. She had not only achieved her goal, but had done so by dismantling the very structure that sought to hold her back. Her victory was complete. That evening, As the sun set over Mukurwe, casting a golden hue over Mukurwe, Waria sat in her grandmother's hut. She smiled, holding the worn, old scroll. She had used her modern knowledge and her ancestral legacy to expose a secret so juicy and scandalous it had undone an entire lifetime of calculated deception. Fate had indeed written her victory, and it was a story of a courageous daughter who reclaimed not just her dream, but the true soul of her village.
Waria did not step into the role of village herbalist with triumphant fanfare, but with the quiet reverence her grandmother Shiku had shown. Her first official act was not a grand public ceremony, but a simple gesture of healing. She ordered the entire contents of her grandmother's ancestral stores, which Kamau had hoarded, to be inventoried and meticulously cleaned. She then hosted a day of open consultation, setting aside the rigid, old-fashioned fee structure for a sliding scale based on need. A shocking and revolutionary practice in the conservative village. Her mother, Nyara, and sisters, Mura and Wana, watched from a distance. Stripped of their prestige, they were now just another family waiting for their fortunes to turn. Their pride, however, kept them from approaching. Waria's first patient was Elder Macharia, a respected council member who had reluctantly voted against her. He suffered from a persistent, painful ailment that Kamau had merely treated with expensive, inert charms. Waria, combining her grandmother's rooibos infusion knowledge with her modern understanding of anti-inflammatory compounds, prepared a simple, effective blend. The healing was swift and undeniable. Within days, Elder Macharia was well, a living testament to Waria's true skills. Her second crucial move was the creation of a village seed bank near the Mugumo tree, dedicated to preserving and sharing the rare medicinal plants the community depended on. This signaled a fundamental shift. The sacred knowledge was no longer a tool for control, but a gift for communal prosperity. Waria did not seek to punish the village for its past scorn, but to heal it, replacing the sour grapes of betrayal with the sweet fruits of genuine care. She was now the true root of Mukurwe.
Never let the noise of others' fleeting joy distract you from the quiet truth growing in your own spirit. When the voices of the village rise in scorn, remember that the true roots of your power lie not in titles given by men, but in the unbroken wisdom of those who came before you. The shadow of betrayal may hide the sun for a season, but the ancestral fire cannot be quenched. Have the courage to dig deep, for what they try to bury, your worth, your lineage, your destiny, is exactly what will bring forth your most glorious victory. Resilience is the simple act of choosing to investigate the darkness instead of letting the darkness consume you. 5 key takeaways from the story. These are the stones laid on the path of a courageous spirit. 1. The authority of self-worth. True competence and self-worth do not require external validation from a corrupt or jealous system. Waria's ability was inherent. The public rejection was only a temporary illusion orchestrated by fear. 2. Betrayal is born of fear, not strength. The loudest voices of scorn and opposition, like Kama and Waria's family, are often motivated by a desperate need to protect their own fragile, stolen power. Their confidence was a mask for deep-seated fraudulence. 3. Knowledge as an ancestral tool. Legacy and modern methods are not mutually exclusive. Waria's blend of her grandmother's traditional knowledge with her own investigative rigor, the poultice technique, was the precise key needed to unlock the ancient truth. 4. Resilience is strategic investigation. When faced with failure, the path to triumph is not blind rage, but calm, targeted investigation. Waria chose strategy over despair, using the coded clues left by her ancestor to expose the root of the betrayal. 5. Individual victory purifies the community. By reclaiming her honor, Waria did not just win a personal battle, she performed a vital service for her entire village, stripping away decades of corruption and restoring integrity to the ancestral traditions.
And so, another echo fades into silence. For now, what truth did this story whisper to your heart? Share it with us in the comments below, for your words are what keep these echoes alive. If you haven't yet, subscribe and ring the bell. Let your heart be ready, for the next secret we uncover is never far away. This has been Echoed Enigmas, where every ending is simply a new beginning.